the future of cash in our society and in our e-commerce. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to stage Celine Blanchot from Glory. Welcome to stage, Celine. And Lauren Wolf from Klarna. Merci. Asseyez-vous.
We were worried we were not going to be able to hear you.
No, I know, it's funny. It's so weird. So would you, first of all, introduce yourself and a little bit what Glory does?
Yeah, hello everyone, I'm Celine Blanchot. I'm working for Glory since now 4 years. I've started my career 12 years ago in the industry of cash in a CIT company. So I know a little bit how cash is important in our society. Glory Global Solution is a Japanese company who is leader in the all solution for cash automation for banks, CITs and retailers. So I'm head of retail and CIT marketing for the EMEA region. So my job is to work closely with salesperson to provide them some information about cash and about the market from a retail perspective or a CIT perspective.
Thank you very much. And Laurel?
Hi, Laurel Wolf, looking after marketing at Klarna. I'll just do a little bit about Klarna first. So we're a Swedish headquartered payments company. We do three things: Pay Now, Pay Later, and Slice It. Pay Now is an online checkout and payments gateway for the facilitation of immediate transactions, like with card. Pay Later is what we're known for. It's basically a form of invoice that lets people buy goods and pay for them 30 days later. Very popular here in the UK. Our biggest clients include ASOS, JD Sports, Arcadia Group. And then we also do consumer finance, which we call Slice It. It's monthly installments. People can buy things on credit. One of our biggest clients there is Swoon, for example. Arcadia Group also takes Slice It. But just about me personally, I've been at Klarna for 2 years, but I have been around the payment space and retail space for a while. Prior to this, I was at a payments company called Verifone, very well known in in-store payments, looking after their European marketing.
Great. Now we've got a number of questions. So as I said, please ask questions as we go through the session. And I want to start with a big question. A much bigger question than I can answer, but you two can. A cashless society, can it happen or not?
Yes, it definitely can. It will happen. But I mitigate that because there will always be a little room for cash. There's always some time where you might need it. But you can see in Sweden, for example, that is the example everyone uses, is that they are like 98% cash, or 98% digital payments. The cash is the tiniest little bit. A lot of stores don't even accept cash anymore in Sweden. And they accept cards in everywhere that you might want, in taxis, wherever. So yeah, digital payments taking over. But I know there is room. I don't want to upset you. There will always be some space and room for cash.
I will start to say I'm not agreeing with Laurel.
That's what it's all about.
That's what you're not supposed to agree.
So for sure, we have seen the entrance of new means of payment since a few years now, and the volume of cash is decreasing. That's certain, and it will continue in the years to come. But as Laurel said, there will always be a room for cash in a number of retailers, and retailers in a large way. I mean, hotels, taxis, cinemas, and blah, blah, blah. They will have to accept cash because consumers like cash. And they will have to offer the choice to consumer because it's important that the consumer can have the choice. Sometimes he wants to pay by cash, sometimes he wants to use digital payment, sometimes he wants to use card. So the room for cash is still there, and cash will still there, even if the volume of cash in circulation will decrease.
So do you feel, picking that apart a bit, do you feel that use of cash is a generational, demographic-led thing? So, I mean, I don't know if you've got any research, but is it older people who tend to use cash, or are the youngsters, people younger than me, still using cash, or are they more sort of swinging towards digital payments? Is that a fair assumption?
It is often the older segment still using cash. So I think it's interesting to see where cash is being used. Younger kids are not using cash at all. It's almost a foreign concept, but older segments are perhaps underserved by digital payments, or it's maybe too complicated, or it's too much for them to do. So cash is kind of the default. There's also markets, of course, where cash is bigger than other countries where they don't have the infrastructure to support digital payments, or that infrastructure is just emerging. So cash becomes more important in those particular markets.
Yeah, I would say it depends also of the ATM and bank branches. We know that in the UK, the number of bank branches are decreasing too. So it's not easy to withdraw cash. And when you cannot withdraw cash, of course, you will use another mean of payment. When you can withdraw cash, you can use cash as a mean of payment. We did a research and a study last year, and we polled 1,500 people in the US, in the UK, and in Australia. And when we see the results, young people continue to use cash. But there are more youth than other people to use other means of payment, and especially digital payments. So I would say that it's a balance, depending of where, which kind of purchase you are doing, and of course in the country.
And what you feel comfortable with, as you said earlier, the consumer decides. So what do they feel comfortable with? What are they able to understand and use and feel the most positive about? They'll use those things when they need it.
And I think it's an interesting parallel of, for example, like magazine consumption. So people are actually reading physical copies of something, where the magazines that are doing well are the ones that cater towards the older generation like
Giving
myself.
choice. Yeah, that's a good example. Actually,
whereas
nice.
Actually, a younger demographic are more in tune with using all the other devices in order to get their content on a daily basis. So taking that analogy forward, as I die off, right, and you're older, we're all going to die one day. Sorry for that. But we all are going to die one day. As we die off, the older people, do you think then cash will become obsolete?
I think it's very hard to say that it's going to become obsolete. People always want cash. There will be a need for it, but I think its use will be less and less and less. But it is the one thing that you could always go back to. You know cash works. It always is dependable. There's no security risk with cash. And you always have to think about the security element with a card payment, digital payments.
Yeah, I'm agree. I mean, as I said previously, there will be less and less cash in our society, but cash will not disappear. We know that it's important to keep cash, and when we look at Nordics countries like Sweden or Finland, they now think about how to make cash re-enter into their countries. Because in some case you need to use cash, so it's for me the cash will not disappear.
I think it might be interesting too to think about what cash could be in the future. Like there'd be less denominations, there'd be less types of formats of it. You'd be like, since the usage would be less, then the amount of options of the cash would be less too. Like what if we only got down to like 2 or 3 kinds of bills and 1 coin? Wouldn't that be interesting?
Everyone rounded up or rounded down their costs, like they're starting to do now. And you touched on thinking about security. Obviously, there's a number of, I mean, you can get robbed of cash, but obviously you can also get robbed of your digital cash, whether it's real or ethereal. So how are you dealing with those challenges?
I was just going to use that BA example. Everybody knows about it, of course. Something very weird about that hack, by the way, is that I've seen a lot of articles that said that they've taken also the CVC, that the 3-digit code is on the back of the card. That shouldn't actually be saved in any system.
Shouldn't be recorded, no.
Yes, so I don't know how people are getting a hold of that unless BA is doing something very, very wrong, or it's happening during the processing of the payment. So anyways, quite unusual, I think. But I actually am affected by this particular hack, but I feel like people are they're not okay with it, and it is definitely wrong, but they're like, okay, it's a price to pay, because what's my other option? I'm going to pay for these flights in cash? Impossible, right? You have to use it to get the thing that you want, so it's about convenience. So I think as these things, these hacks and their security and our ability to mitigate fraudsters will get better and better, but at some point we have to also say, okay, I understand this might happen occasionally, and that's a price I have to pay to have the convenience, the other thing that I very much want. But that's not to excuse the hack at all. I think everyone's getting better at identifying the fraudsters and fixing the holes. It's just the fraudsters are always smart too. They're always coming one step ahead. They have a very interesting way of going about getting what they want, and they'll continue to do that.
Yeah, I do think it's important for the consumer to feel comfortable with the mean of payment he will use. So it's to offer convenience, it's to offer security, and then a seamless customer experience at the checkout. We all know that the checkout is the last point of contact with the consumer for a retailer. So he have to be able to offer a great experience even for the payment to his consumer, to his customers. Yeah.
And I think the BA hack threw up the question of trust, okay, which I think obviously, again, you know, it took a while for people to trust effectively, you know, digital and online payments. And yet we're bombarded now with stories of obviously there are other hacks apart from the BA hack where people's, you know, information has been taken, data as well as financial information. Do you think you know, that erodes that trust a bit? And
every time it happens, it does
shines
erode trust. It is very hard for the brand to kind of bounce back, particularly in the media aftermath. But I think about 3 years ago, Target in the US, huge hack, data breach, loads of stuff taken. Yes, they had a short-term effect to their revenue number, absolutely, but they're back in the good graces now. People are still shopping there. It's a hard thing for them to recover from a brand perspective, but it just takes time to build the trust back up.
Yeah, and that's why I think that cash will not disappear because of things like that. I mean, we have all example of attacks against the card system. So cash, we know that it's one of the more secure payments in our society.
that and gold.
Yeah.
Bring back gold. Now, on that security notion, are biometrics the next big...
I was just going to interrupt, sorry. When I was working at Verifone, we had to do vending machines in Dubai, and they had gold coins in little gold bars that you could buy in a vending machine.
At the market rate. There's one.
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
There's one in Westfield. There's one in Stratford.
Is there?
And in Shepherd's Bush. So go and get yourself some gold.
We did a nice case study on that one.
Yeah. But it is an interesting thing, right? Because obviously it's a finite resource.
Yeah.
And the thing about cash, you assume there's a finite amount of that, and then when you think about Bitcoin and other digital payments in the future, it appears to be like infinite. So therefore it feels a lot. Anyway, I digress heavily. Are biometrics the next big thing in payments, or for retailers, or is it a bit of a gimmick?
I think they're one next big thing. I could say there's lots of other things. There's things like what we're doing, Pay Later, for example. Yep. That merchants like. I like to think of Pay Later as not necessarily a payment method, but it's a service that we help merchants provide. Try before you buy service. But I think it's one thing that a merchant could want and the consumer might want. I mean, are some of them gimmicky? Yes, but I've also worked on projects, for example, where a biometric authentication of a card transaction, for example, fingerprint in Nigeria or India, was a very valid thing because people didn't have another way to authenticate a transaction. It was also a good way in Nigeria in particular where they were using it to also register themselves. So it was a way of identifying the person. It wasn't just an authentication of the transaction, but an authentication of the person, as opposed to doing a signature.
Wouldn't that prevent fraud, though? I mean,
yes, absolutely.
So the BA hack wouldn't have been an issue because then
fraud.
So it's less of a gimmick.
But then there's Apple Pay, like you're paying with your face for books or whatever. I mean, there are ways to get around that too. So nothing is completely 100% safe, but it's interesting, and I think it's just one choice that a merchant has to offer. They have to have a multitude of choices because that's what the consumer expects to see.
Yeah, I fully agree. It will be very important in the years to come to have this kind of payment, and it's another mean of payment that can be offered to a customer.
You said about frictionless and seamless, two words obviously are often bandied around at conferences. But how can we make payments so seamless, so frictionless, and automated that a customer doesn't even notice?
They're well on their way, I think.
And this is a good thing for society. Is it a good thing to blink and suddenly a coffee's there? Is that would you think that would be a good thing for society to not even think about the fact they're transacting anymore?
I do think that from a consumer perspective, it's important to have the act of payment. I'm not sure that it's a good thing to be able to enter into a shop, take something, and just go out and say, okay, it will be like that. From a financial perspective, it's not good for people. For a retailer, I do think it's...
I think there's an argument for a consumer to be mindful of their payments. I mean, this was an argument when contactless launched, for example. Are the transactions too fast? Are people making a thought? Does it seem even like a real transaction? You're just tapping your card and you're going away because you're not entering the PIN.
Yeah.
But now look, if somebody asks me for the PIN with the card now, I'm mad. I don't even have 5 seconds to put a PIN in anymore. I want that contactless immediacy. I want that, but I think there's a job for us to be more mindful of how we spend and it's more about responsible spending and how we go about managing our finances. And just because that the transaction itself is more quick and immediate doesn't mean that we don't have a responsibility to think about it ourselves as a shopper.
Yeah, and I think obviously there is boundaries around contactless. So it used to be £20, now it's £30. Unless you're Apple Pay, you can buy a car with it.
I've heard they're even going to do some more. It's going up higher.
Yeah. So we are arbitrarily, if you like, from basically a point of view of rules, making a consumer think, because obviously you can't do it over that. But so I think it's quite interesting. And I think where it gets more interesting is what is the future of digital and borderless payments in cash? What's your stance on that?
I would say that we used to say that cash is universally accepted, and that's true. I mean, you can pay with a currency in another country, and House Solution, for example, can accept multi-currencies. So you can pay, for example, in Switzerland, you can pay with euros and receiving a giving back in franc Swiss. So it's, I do think it's not a problem. Of course, other solution can be easier to use, but the use of a currency in another country is for me, it's not a problem.
Obviously, you work in a business, borderless payments are part of the business.
Yep, cross-border transactions, card transactions, whatever. So we're very supportive of it, and we try to make it as seamless as possible from country to country.
Cool. Now we've got some great questions from the floor. They're all from Anonymous, so you should all log in, guys, really. So we can capture the data and then we can lose it in a hack. What type of retailers and customers tend to use cash most in your experiences?
I would say it depends. Lots of, for example, less than 20 euros, for example, and we have seen that in the recent report of the ECB. The payments are doing by cash. We have a lot of supermarkets, discounter, but also bakeries or a convenience store that accept cash. So it's I would say
that's why contactless was invented, to sweep up those transactions. That's why Visa and MasterCard want those made contactless, so it could get rid of all those small value cash transactions and put them on a card. That's what it was for.
Yeah, I know, but when we are looking to all our customer, we have different kind of retailers, so cash is still there in a lot of different areas.
There's no specific one.
No.
I can think of like when do I use cash? Maybe at like a car boot sale or with a taxi, even though the taxis do support now quite a lot of card transactions, payments. But it's those types of where the infrastructure isn't there or the terminal isn't there. That's where the cash is, simply because there isn't another option. I think of a peer-to-peer payments, quite a popular one in Sweden called Swish, for example. That kind of eliminates cash as well, because now you're in the situation where at like a car boot sale, you can pay that vendor, who isn't necessarily business, it's just a person, but you can send them the money back and forth. So there's those types of situations too, where it's becoming less and less the need for cash.
So, and it's quite interesting. So obviously, first thing is obviously a lot of places in the UK, if it's under £2, £3 or £5, because the retailer has to pay a cost for the transaction fee, that you'll find that you can't actually use. You know, you'll get to the till, you go, it's £1.20. Oh, you have to buy a pint of milk and something else and some chewing gum or whatever else.
That's a little bit of a false economy too.
Yeah.
If they looked at their pricing structure, that's not necessarily what would happen, because they're looking at it as a per transaction
Yeah.
basis instead of seeing the bigger picture
Yeah.
of all the transactions for the month and kind of amalgamating them in that way. I think they're looking at line items on their bill and they're going, I'm paying how much for that? As opposed to looking at, oh, I'm not paying that for this type of transaction. So I think sometimes particularly smaller merchants do that.
Yeah, exactly. And then also that's led to the rise. There's a business called Kulu, which I'm sorry, I'm from London, so a bit London-centric. But my local fish and chip shop doesn't take card payments. It has this local currency where you upload some money and they get.
Oh, well, interesting.
And it's basically all the merchants in the area, like local kebab shop and stuff, does it as well. So instead of them subscribing to a terminal, they have this it's almost like a small cooperative of digital
that's
money,
nice.
which could go down the pan tomorrow and they'd lose out. But it's quite an interesting way of trying to hoover up that little bit of cash money. Anyway, enough about me. Do you believe teenagers will always use cash because parents don't allow them to use debit or credit cards?
No, they're going to have debit and credit cards younger and younger. So the cash issue is irrelevant. They will maybe give them some cash, but certainly people are getting cards, particularly prepaid cards. That's quite popular now. Is giving a prepaid card, and then they've set a limit. And then they're also learning how to manage finances in that way. Like if you give them prepaid cards, says, oh, there's £100 in it, it's got to last you the week. All your stuff's got to be on it. That's a nice lesson. It's good teaching for the future. You should be doing more of that.
Great parents, £100 a week. Wow.
I don't have any kids, so I have no idea. Is that a lot of money or not? I don't know.
I mean, and it's quite interesting. I've just done some work with some influencers, and their biggest audience are 11 to 13-year-olds. And obviously they're trying to sell merch, as they call it. But obviously a third party has to buy the merch for them, because obviously children of that age don't have access to cash or digital payments in order to buy the stuff online. So I think it's an area where children are probably quite frustrated that they don't have access to digital payments.
Yeah, but I do think that it can be good for teenagers and children to have cash to realize the value of money. I mean, it's so easy for them to say, oh, okay, I buy that, and with a phone or with a digital card. So having cash, it's also to realize the value of things and the amount of money you have.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, Karen, a lot of cash questions actually. So everyone's a bit scared about losing their cash by the sounds of it.
So cash is not dead. You can say that.
Cash is alive and kicking. Does cash on delivery have a future? If so, for whom and for what use cases?
Yeah, we've seen more and more often cash on delivery, because some people don't want to pay with card or with something. So Uber now also accepts cash in some countries. So as we've seen, the cash is not dead, and in some case you can continue to use cash, and cash on delivery is one of good example.
Well, we could completely fix that, because we're doing pay after delivery, basically. So you can pay us, get the stuff, pay us 30 days later. Don't need to give anyone any cash. I've never used cash on delivery ever. I've never had a need to use it. So
Has anyone here used cash on delivery? Yeah, one guy. I have once. I bought something from a very Mason Margiela, like a retailer, and it was in Germany. And one of the options to checkout was cash on delivery by DHL. And I thought I'd click on it, just see what happens. And the bloke turned up with the thing, and I had to pay him in actual cash.
It sounds crazy.
To the actual decimal point, and give him that money.
Yeah.
And then he gave me a handwritten receipt. And then effectively the complete was done, and that was like a year ago. That's not a new. It's not like a new thing.
But the reason is so you could see it and say, yes, I want this. This is what I ordered.
I didn't open the box though. It was like it just before he gave me the box, I had to pay him.
So that's exactly what we do. We eliminate the need to do that. The pay later, you get the stuff, you make sure you like it, it's what you want, then you pay us. No problem solved.
So you solved that problem. No more cash on delivery.
But once again, I do think that it's offer to consumers the choice and the convenience. If they want to pay by cash when they order from internet, or now they can. So it's once again, it's offer to consumer different means of payments in different situations, and offer them the choice to pay how they want to pay.
And of course, the recompense or the ability to get money back if something's not quite right is a lot better than it used to be. So I'd imagine one of the big boons and benefit of cash on delivery, as you said, is looking at something,
making sure
it's what you want, or it's been built
or
to
the
your
right quality, or it's
yeah.
not broken, or something like that.
Exactly. So, does cashless payment have an issue of fragmentation of platforms?
What does that mean exactly? Fragmentation of platforms.
So lots of different ways of doing it. So I've talked about that local
Yeah.
one, and then obviously you've got the Visa, MasterCard, then you might have PayPal, then also you've got Klarna.
There are a lot of different options for retailers, absolutely. They have to pick the ones that they think resonates with their target market the best. I think it does create some extra work for the merchant because they have to make that decision, and they'll have different vendors that are supplying different things. There are some moves to consolidate, particularly with the card schemes, because they've got some of their own online payment mechanisms that they're trying to bring together so that there are less of those different choices. But I think it's not necessarily an issue, it's just something that the retailer has to kind of carefully navigate and figure out what's right for them.
I would say it's one of the issue for the moment of cashless payment. So this is why people continue to pay by cash, and retailers continue to accept cash, because sometimes to accept another mean of payment, a new mean of payments, it's really complicated for them, especially for small retailers, for independent retailers. It could be difficult to accept a lot of new means of payments with different platforms and.
Yep.
There's definitely, I feel, an opportunity for, if you like, aggregation of payment.
Yeah.
I mean, if any of you, as you'll probably shop online, if you get to payment page and then you're presented with lots of little check boxes of how I want to pay, and it's getting longer and longer. You've got your normal ones, then you got PayPal, then it's something else, and then it's like it gets to the point of you choose the wrong one, and it becomes a bad user experience.
Yeah.
When you've done anything of that in the past, have you found that to be the case?
It can be. I think that, again, the retailer doesn't have to offer them all. They need to offer the ones that they think resonate the most with their consumers, and then go with those. But it is something that has been discussed in the industry, absolutely, that there's a proliferation of payment methods. So I can see some consolidation happening in the future, I would guess. I particularly see within the card associations, like Visa and MasterCard offer basically the same thing, but they're calling it two different things in unique ways, where they could, if they were to join forces, eliminate some of that.
Do you think also as retailers, retailers could use machine learning and AI to actually predict the type of method of payment that I would like to use?
Exactly, especially if you've been there before and you've used a certain kind, and then they smartly show that payment method as your preferred one. We do that at Klarna, actually, so we can help within our checkout make sure that the one that you like is the one that you see first.
Yeah, it seems like a quick win for all of you, I think. So will we start to see cryptocurrencies accepted by retailers? Thanks, Anonymous, for that one.
I think yes, we could in the future. I think we will see some adventurous retailers use it as a PR move. And they'll be like, yeah, we're accepting Bitcoins at, I think it could be a high street, main name. I think it could happen.
Could that already be in your platform now? Have you dabbled with that?
We are always thinking about supporting all different kinds of payment methods. But that's a real dividing point. I can't remember now. I think it was Square that said they weren't going to accept Bitcoins, but Stripe did say they were going to accept them as part of their payments gateway. I think. Some of them say yes, and some of them say no, basically. Well, no one can decide whether they want to accept them or not.
There was that. I think there was that famous PR real estate stunt where you could buy an island with Bitcoin. Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that was available.
I think there could be a high street name. I don't know. John Lewis. Wouldn't that be interesting for a PR move for them to start accepting cryptocurrencies? I don't know.
You heard it here first. John Lewis and Partners, new brand. Going to be.
It's an idea.
It's an idea. And I mean, obviously, you come from another point of view, cash. What's your view on cryptocurrencies?
For the moment, I'm not afraid about cryptocurrency against cash, but I do think that when we look at the evolution of means of payment that is which are offered to consumer, we can see that they're just added to each other. Nothing replaces another. So I do think it will continue. I mean, there's space for all different types of means of payment. So cryptocurrency will perhaps enter into the market of means of payment, but it will not replace totally another means of payment.
We've got a question from someone who's actually logged in. So thank you, vegan secret like steak, whoever that is. Which cashless payment options are struggling?
The pays, all the pays. So your Apple Pays, your Android Pays, they have got to think about what that wallet actually means. Because right now it's just a payment method. It is another way of doing a card payment. That's all it is, in a fun way. They have always promised that they were going to have things like loyalty in there and other value-added services, but they're not in there. And it's very hard now to kind of differentiate between any of those pays. They're all sort of the same. So I think they have to think about how to make their offerings different, how to add more value to the consumer so they can win more consumers over and get people using them.
Good point.
Yeah, I'm agree. It's different kind of payment. It's different choice that is what our
It's literally a card transaction. You've put a card in the wallet. It's a card transaction. Nothing. It's just fun. We've dressed it up.
Yeah. You put a card in the wallet. You register it. You get a letter from your bank telling you that you put a card on a mobile device. And bearing in mind the intelligence and the data that your mobile phone has about you, and the fact that all it is doing is replicating your Oyster card or buying a paper using your contactless
Your
card.
phone.
You're right, it's very limited. So with that in mind, do you feel that they have got something up their sleeve, Google and Apple?
They must. They always do, don't
You
they?
hope so, don't
They
you?
have to. But a lot of the early discussion about it is there's going to be loyalty in there. So there's going to be a way to collect loyalty points across different merchants.
Yeah. Without doing it. So like.
But they haven't done it, or other things like offering other kinds of payment mechanisms to support the wallet within Apple Pay, for example. But they haven't done it. So I don't see it like really taking off. Share of checkout I hear quite low for the pays at all the merchants where they are.
Yeah. Again, loyalty is obviously a thing which is often bandied around, and obviously the ability to extract from transactions loyalty to save you showing a separate card. But I still don't feel we're there yet because it's such a fractured.
Loyalty is another thing to look at. Like traditional loyalty programs, how they've been structured in the past, people doesn't resonate. And sometimes they're so complicated, you don't even know. Come back to BA again and their points. I'm like, for heaven's sakes, I don't even know what I'm allowed to have with that. So limited in what the points can actually buy.
Yeah.
But I feel like loyalty more is now about saving people time. That's the most precious commodity. I want something that's quick and convenient. The loyalty program has to be giving me back time, or I'm not even interested in getting involved with it. And that is another interesting discussion about loyalty programs.
In fact, thanks Anonymous. Google do have loyalty cards in its wallet.
That's good.
For instance,
other people need to be doing it.
I mean, Apple Pay do also. You can get. I've got a Starbucks card in wallet. I never use it, but I've got one in there.
But wouldn't it be great if it wasn't just limited to Starbucks, or it was all the cards together, and you were getting something else? I don't know. It seems like they'd have the opportunity because they're taking transactions from all different kinds of places. So you're being rewarded in some way for using Apple Pay.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But surely it's a micro behavioural change, right? So obviously, with cash, or you go into your favourite coffee shop, you'd give them some money. You'd also have a little card thing where they'd stamp it, and that became part of the routine of getting a morning coffee. And then after 9 you get one free. Surely that we don't have those, if you like, those micro nudges to enable that behaviour digitally, right? Yeah. But even though it should be easier.
It seems like it should be, yes.
And I do think that is how they can make the difference with cash. I mean, it's to offer something different. It's for a plus to the consumer.
Right, I love this question because it's massive. Thanks, Anonymous. Do you think the decreasing use of cash will have an impact in the financial stability of a country?
Sorry, I was in the previous one. Sorry.
Yeah. Do you think the decreasing use of cash will have an impact on the financial stability of a country? That's such a big question. I mean, we're obviously all at Davos and we are all financial experts, so we will do that one to your best ability.
I really do think that it can have an impact on the society. Becoming a cashless society, just think to pro people. We can see that we have to find solutions to help them to be able to pay with digital payment, for example, if it's the way the country would like to come. So having a cashless society could have terrible impact on the country. So.
But just that further, so say for example, if you took all the cash out of a country and you were solely dependent on digital payments, and then a state-sponsored, hacking group, I'm not going to mention any country, suddenly came in and took away the ability for that country to transact. Obviously, it's going to have a huge impact, right?
Yeah, sure.
It'd be bad, yeah.
Yeah. That was a great question. Thanks, Anonymous. We've asked that question. So why do some platforms charge for digital payments and others do not?
Because they got to make money. But I do think there are instances, we don't do this in the UK market, but there are instances where people are paying like a surcharge for card payments or for other types of payment methods to the consumer, which is not very consumer-centric or consumer-friendly. So I don't necessarily like those. And I know we're not supposed to be doing, I know Visa and MasterCard, for example, frown on any use of a surcharge with card payments. Yeah. I think they might have eliminated the ability, you're not supposed to be doing it at all. So it isn't, it's not a customer-centric way of looking at doing things, but on the other hand, that is a way to make additional revenue.
Yeah.
So. It's all about money.
Yeah.
Actually, show of hands, who's used cash today in this room?
Thank you.
5. Oh yeah. 5 people. Who hasn't used cash today, but bought stuff? He hasn't bought anything today, look. That's been a beat.
Oh, look at that.
Keep date. I mean, it's quite interesting. So you see a majority of people aren't using cash already, and it sort of it shows, and obviously it shows the opportunity and also how it's changing. How can invoice-based try before you buy payment providers help protect retailers from the cost of high return rates? That sounds like a very loaded question.
It is. I think it might be. So what we do at Klarna is we look at the total customer lifetime value, and we encourage people to think about returns a bit differently. It's another customer touch point. So yes, try before you buy gives people the opportunity to buy more things. They might be returning more things, but they also come back and use try before you buy again to do the same thing. Overall, they end up keeping more stuff because you're giving the opportunity to look at things, 5 different things, and say, yeah, I actually keep 4 of those now. I like these things. I've gotten the chance to try them on. I'm interested in them. I'm going to keep them. So I think it's looking over the course of the lifetime of the customer and how the value accumulates over time and how many things that they buy over a period of time can mitigate that higher return rate. I also think it's again about rethinking what a return is and stop seeing it always as a negative. It's an opportunity to interact with the consumer again. You do it right, people will love you for it and they will keep coming back. We know, for example, Pay Later drives a 20% increase in purchase frequency. So regardless of the AOV or the increased basket size and the conversion, they are coming back again and again to use the solution.
Yeah, it's a service you can offer to consumers. So it's.
Yeah, and I think there is this amazing thing called shops, where you can actually go in and speak to an actual person and use actual cash and try those things on as well. And it often.
But not all retailers are in a shop.
That's true. It often feels much maligned, doesn't it? We have this such thrust for disruption that sometimes we forget actually things have worked. You know, in the past. I'm not saying obviously I'm a digital person.
It's true. 75% of transactions still take place, any type of transactions still take place in a store. So obviously great room for growth for e-commerce, but it is not the predominant method of shopping.
Yeah, and obviously you want more people doing that, right?
Yeah, of course. But with the cash on delivery, we see that there's space for cash.
That can be the completion of the transaction, yes.
That's the 2 hands coming together.
Yeah.
So, I mean, thank you. That's been amazing.
Illuminating.
It has I'm illuminated, and I know a lot more about cashless. I mean, so quick show of hands. Do you feel that cash has a future? Yes or no? Yes. Put your hand up.
Thank you.
No, you don't feel it has a future. Well, it's quite. And there's
Ethan,
not undecided. Who's undecided? Well, he's always undecided, that guy. So it's quite even, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think that shows us a lesson that I think it still has a future. Thank you very much. Big round of applause.
Thank you.
We did it. Yeah.